The impossible task. The red dust of Proxima b swirled through the cramped streets of Haven Colony, coating everything in a fine crimson powder that worked its way into machinery, lungs, and spirits alike. Commander Maya Chen squinted through the haze at the towering crystalline structures that dominated the skyline beyond the settlement's borders. The Valaxians called those spires home. 15-foot-tall beings with iridescent skin that refracted light like living prisms. Beautiful, advanced, and utterly convinced of human inferiority. Maya wiped the dust from her tactical display and studied the latest readings from the colony's failing shield generators. 3 years since the Valaxian fleet had rescued the human colony ship from deep space, redirecting it to this harsh world they claimed was a merciful solution to humanity's homelessness after Earth's ecosystem collapse. 3 years of thinly veiled servitude, mining the rare gravitate crystals that powered Valaxian technology, while being treated like children, intellectually stunted creatures to be pitied and controlled. "Commander," a voice called from behind her. Maya turned to see Elijah Okafor approaching, his dark skin ashen with exhaustion beneath the dust coating. As Haven's chief engineer, he'd been working double shifts trying to keep the environmental systems running with the meager power allotment the Valaxians granted them. "The Northern Quadrant's air scrubbers are down again," he reported, his voice tight. "And the Valaxians have denied our request for replacement parts. They say we should be able to manufacture them ourselves if we were truly an evolved species." Maya's jaw clenched. It was always the same. Set impossible tasks, watch humans fail, use that failure as proof of inferiority, and tighten the controls. Their benevolent oversight was slowly suffocating the colony. "How many will be affected?" she asked. "At least 300 people. We can reroute from other sectors, but that's just spreading the problem." Before Maya could respond, the colony's emergency alert system blared. Both their comms lit up simultaneously with a priority message. "VALXIN Delegation AP Puro Iching Central Plaza. Command STAFF presence required." "Perfect timing," Maya muttered. "Let's go see what fresh hell our saviors have for us today." The Central Plaza had once been intended as Haven's community heart, with gardens and gathering spaces. Now it served primarily as the stage for Valaxian pronouncements. A crowd was already gathering as Maya and Elijah arrived, faces tense with the particular wariness that came from years of disappointment. The Valaxian delegation materialized in a flash of prismatic light, their preferred method of entrance, designed to remind humans of the technological gap between their species. Ambassador Exalian stood at the center, towering over the assembled humans, light dancing across his crystalline form as he surveyed the crowd with 6 multifaceted eyes. "Citizens of Haven." The universal translator rendered his musical tones into flat standard English. "The Oversight Council has concluded its assessment of your settlement's viability." Maya felt the crowd tense around her. Viability was a loaded term coming from the Valaxians. "Your energy consumption remains inefficient. Your reproduction rate exceeds sustainability metrics. Your technological development is—" He paused, as if searching for a diplomatic term. "Stagnant." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Maya stepped forward. "Ambassador, with respect, we've repeatedly requested access to technical specifications that would help us improve our systems. Our engineers cannot comprehend them." Exalian finished for her. "We have provided materials appropriate to your developmental stage." Elijah made a noise somewhere between a laugh and a cough. The appropriate materials were the equivalent of giving quantum computing schematics to medieval blacksmiths. "However," Exalian continued, "the Council has decided to offer you an opportunity to prove your species' potential." His upper limbs gestured to the eastern horizon, where the massive ridge of Mount Caraxes rose. "Your colony requires consistent water. The mountain holds it in abundance. Build an aqueduct to bring it to your settlement." Maya frowned. "An aqueduct? That's ancient technology by your standards." "Indeed, perhaps achievable for your kind." The condescension in Ixalian's tone was unmistakable. However, the terrain between here and Mount Caraxes includes the Great Chasm, a gap your primitive materials cannot span. Additionally, the water source lies within the crystal forests, where the magnetic fields would disrupt your simplistic pumping mechanisms. So you're asking us to do what you know is impossible, Maya said flatly. Not impossible for an advanced species, Ixalian countered. Merely beyond humans. You have one standard orbit to complete this task. Success will earn your colony independence and full technological access. Failure will confirm your need for permanent oversight and relocation to more restricted habitation zones. Murmurs of anger and fear spread through the crowd. Relocation would mean even tighter Valaxian control. And if we refuse this opportunity? Maya asked. Refusal equals failure, Ixalian stated simply. With that, the delegation vanished in another flash of light, leaving the humans standing in the dust-filled plaza. As the crowd erupted into anxious discussion, Maya pulled her command staff aside. They're setting us up to fail, Dr. Sarah Lindsay, the colony's head scientist, said. The Great Chasm is over 2 kilometers wide. Even if we could build a bridge, the magnetic disruption from the crystal forests would make any standard aqueduct system collapse. It's a pretext for tighter restrictions, Maya agreed, but we can't just surrender. Elijah had been uncharacteristically quiet. Now he looked up, his eyes bright with something Maya hadn't seen in the colony for months. Hope. What if we don't build an aqueduct? He said slowly. That's literally the task, Eli, Sarah replied. No, the task is to bring water from the mountain to the settlement. An aqueduct is just one solution, a solution they know won't work with our technology. Maya studied him. You have another idea. Maybe. It's not fully formed yet, but he hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. The Valaxians think in straight lines. Advanced technology, yes, but their problem-solving is remarkably linear. They're expecting us to try spanning the chasm, fighting the magnetic fields. What if we work with them instead? With the magnetic fields? Sarah looked skeptical, but intrigued. And with gravity, and with the planet's rotation. Look, I need to run some calculations, but... His eyes were alive now, his mind clearly racing ahead. Commander, I need a team. The best minds we have who can think outside traditional engineering. Maya felt a spark of the same energy. You'll have it. Whatever you need. The next 3 weeks saw Haven Colony transform. The central plaza became an impromptu design center, with holographic models floating above hastily assembled workstations. Children were recruited to build small-scale test models, while the colony's 3D fabricators worked overtime producing prototype components. Elijah's concept was audacious. Instead of fighting the magnetic fields in the crystal forests, use them as part of a massive electromagnetic pump system. Instead of spanning the Great Chasm with a single structure, create a siphon effect using the planet's natural features and principles of fluid dynamics. It's essentially a planetary-scale version of techniques used by ancient Earth civilizations, he explained to Maya as they reviewed the latest simulations. The Romans used gravity and air pressure in ways that would seem like magic to earlier peoples. We're doing the same with the natural forces here. But theory was easier than implementation. The colony's first attempt to establish a base station at the mountain spring resulted in the complete failure of their equipment as the crystal forest's magnetic fields overwhelmed their shielding. We need to rethink our materials, Elijah said, examining the melted remains of their sensing equipment. The Valaxians gave us access to some of their discarded tech when we first arrived. Those crystalline storage containers they consider obsolete, if we repurpose them. The second setback came when the initial pipeline segments across the plains buckled under pressure testing. 3 colonists were injured, and Maya could feel morale flagging. That evening, she found Elijah standing alone on the observation deck, staring at Mount Caraxes in the distance. Maybe they're right, he said quietly as she joined him. Maybe we're not capable. Maya studied his profile in the dim light. Is that what you believe, or what they've made you believe? He turned to her, a conflict evident in his expression. The Valaxians have spent 3 years telling us what we can't do, Maya continued. And we've spent 3 years unconsciously accepting those limitations. But look at our history, Eli. Humans have always achieved the impossible when backed into a corner. This isn't just any corner. The engineering challenges are just problems. And solving impossible problems is humanity's greatest talent. She gestured to the settlement below them. Every person down there comes from a lineage of problem solvers. Our ancestors crossed oceans not knowing what was on the other side. They flew through air when physics said they couldn't. They put footprints on Earth's moon using computers less powerful than a child's toy today. Elijah's eyes widened slightly as something seemed to click in his mind. Footprints, he whispered. That's it. We've been trying to build too solid, too permanent. What if we make it flexible instead? A system that bends with the pressures instead of trying to contain them. The next morning brought renewed purpose. The design team scrapped their rigid conduit models and began developing a modular adaptive system that could self-adjust to the changing magnetic fields and pressure variances. As work progressed, Maya noticed something else changing in the colony. People walked taller, spoke more confidently. Children played games of outwitting the Valaxians. Even as the work grew harder, the atmosphere lightened. The Valaxians, however, were not pleased by this shift. 2 months into the project, Ambassador Ixelian made an unscheduled appearance at the construction staging area. Your efforts are impressive but misguided, he informed Maya, studying the components being prepared for transport. Our analysis indicates your approach cannot succeed. You would be wise to accept a dignified withdrawal from this challenge. We appreciate your concern, Maya replied coolly, but we'll continue. Ixelian's crystalline form shimmered with what she had learned to recognize as agitation. Commander Chen, there are aspects to this situation you do not comprehend. The Council's decision regarding your colony has already been formalized. This challenge was meant to provide a graceful transition to the new arrangement. Maya stared at him, understanding dawning. You never expected us to even try, did you? This was just theater to justify whatever you planned next. The ambassador's silence was confirmation enough. Well, we are trying, she said firmly. And Valaxian honor demands you uphold your end if we succeed. After Ixelian departed, Maya sought out Elijah, who was supervising the calibration of the magnetic response modules. We've got a problem, she told him. The Valaxians are getting nervous. I think they're realizing we might actually pull this off. Elijah's face hardened. Then we need to work faster. They'll try to interfere. Can we accelerate the timeline? He considered this, running calculations in his head. Maybe. But we'd need everyone, and I mean everyone in the colony. Maya nodded decisively. Then that's what we'll have. The next morning, she addressed the entire colony, explaining the stakes plainly. This isn't just about water anymore. It's about proving our worth to the Valaxians and to ourselves. Every one of us has a role to play in what happens next. What followed was unprecedented in the colony's history, a complete mobilization. Administrative staff became construction workers. Teachers led children in assembly lines, creating the thousands of small connector pieces needed. Medical personnel worked alongside engineers to develop better protective gear for those working near the crystal forests. The Valaxians watched with obvious discomfort as the massive project took shape. Small teams of humans established relay stations along the planned route, each one adapting their section to the local conditions rather than forcing a single design across varied terrain. As they approached the halfway point, with the great chasm still ahead, Maya realized they were being shadowed. Valaxian observation drones hovered just at the edge of visibility, monitoring their progress. They're worried, Elijah noted as they reviewed the day's progress at the forward base camp. Good. Maya wasn't so sure. Worried entities can be dangerous. Double-check everything. Redundancy on all critical systems. Her caution proved justified when the first act of sabotage occurred, a nighttime energy surge that fried the guidance systems on their transport vehicles. The next day, 3 key supply cages were found emptied, critical components missing. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," Sarah said grimly as they assessed the damage. "Then neither will we," Maya decided, defiance rising. The sabotage continued, growing bolder as the humans pushed closer to completing their water system. Valaxian interference shifted from subtle manipulation to overt obstruction. Construction equipment malfunctioned. Supply shipments were inspected and delayed. The crystal forest's magnetic fields mysteriously intensified whenever human teams approached. Maya stood at the edge of the great chasm, watching as Elijah's team prepared to implement the most critical phase of their plan. The massive coiled tubes they'd designed would create a siphon effect across the enormous gap, using principles of fluid dynamics that would have impressed ancient Roman engineers. "Status?" she asked through her comm. "Final calibrations underway," Elijah replied from the opposite side of the chasm, where he was supervising the mountainside installation. "If the Valaxians don't directly intervene, we should be operational within 48 hours. "That's a significant if," Maya murmured. As if summoned by her concern, a flash of prismatic light announced Ambassador Ixalian's arrival. He materialized beside her, his crystalline form reflecting the sunset in disorienting patterns. "Commander Chen," he began without preamble, "the Oversight Council has reviewed your project and found critical safety concerns. All work must cease immediately for evaluation." Maya didn't bother hiding her skepticism. "Safety concerns. After months of work, you discover them now, when we're about to succeed. Your methods are unorthodox and untested," Ixalian stated. "The potential for catastrophic failure is a risk we accept," Maya interrupted. "The terms of your challenge didn't include Valaxian approval of our methods." Ixalian's form pulsed with color, anger Maya had learned to recognize. "This is not a request, Commander. Work will cease. The Council has authorized measures to ensure compliance if necessary." As he spoke, more flashes of light appeared along the chasm edge as dozens of Valaxian security personnel materialized, armed with the crystalline staves they used for peacekeeping. Maya activated her comm. "All teams, stand firm. Continue work as planned." Then to Ixalian, "The challenge stands. Either honor your word or admit openly that this was never a fair test." The ambassador studied her for a long moment. "You mistake stubbornness for courage, Commander. A common human failing." With that, he vanished, but the security forces remained, advancing toward the human workers. "Commander," Sarah's voice came through the comm. "They're at the mountain base too. They're dismantling our intake system." Before Maya could respond, a deafening alarm blared from the colony's emergency channel. Elijah's voice cut through, tense but controlled. "All personnel, evacuate the chasm area immediately. Repeat, clear the area." Maya's blood ran cold. "Eli, what's happening?" "The Valaxians didn't just sabotage our equipment this time," he replied, his voice tight with controlled fury. "They triggered a seismic destabilizer. The whole chasm face is about to collapse." Around her, workers were already running from the edge as the ground began to tremble. The Valaxian security forces had conveniently disappeared. "Casualties?" Maya demanded as she joined the evacuation. "None yet. We got lucky. I spotted their devices being planted and sounded the alarm." Maya watched in helpless rage as months of work crumbled into the chasm, massive sections of the cliff face collapsing in slow motion, taking their carefully constructed siphon system with it. When the dust settled, the gap had widened by nearly 100 meters, and their crossing mechanism lay in ruins at the bottom. Back at the colony that night, the mood was bleak. The command team gathered in Maya's office, faces drawn with exhaustion and defeat. "They've won," Sarah said flatly. "Even if we could rebuild, they'll just destroy it again. And next time, they might not warn us first." Others nodded in grim agreement. Even Elijah sat silent, staring at the floor. Maya looked at each of them in turn. So that's it. We just surrender. What choice do we have? Asked Julian Reeves, the colony's security chief. They're stronger, more advanced, and they've shown they're willing to use force. They've also shown they're afraid, Maya countered. Think about it. Why go to these lengths if they weren't worried we'd succeed? It doesn't matter if they're afraid, Sarah argued. They still hold all the power. Maya shook her head. Not all of it. They want the gravitate we mine for them. They need our labor, and most importantly, they need us to believe we're inferior. She stood, energy returning to her voice. That's why this water project terrifies them. Not because of the water itself, but because it proves their narrative wrong. A tense silence filled the room. Finally, Elijah looked up. You want to continue. I want to finish what we started, Maya confirmed, but differently this time. Elijah studied her, then slowly nodded. The chasm route is destroyed, but there might be another way. It's riskier, more complex, but a familiar spark returned to his eyes. The northern ridge, if we redirect through there, use the geothermal vents to provide extra pressure. The Valaxians will just sabotage that too, Julian pointed out. Not if we do it all at once, Maya said, an audacious plan forming. Not if the entire colony works together in a single coordinated effort. For the next 3 days, the colony appeared broken. Work parties made half-hearted attempts to salvage equipment from the chasm. Maya formally requested an audience with the Oversight Council to discuss a graceful conclusion to the challenge. The Valaxian observers reported that human morale had collapsed. Behind this facade of defeat, however, the colony was preparing for what Elijah had dubbed the Surge, a massive coordinated construction effort that would establish the entire northern route in one continuous 36-hour operation. It's insane, Sarah had said when Maya first outlined the plan. We'd need every able-bodied person working in perfect synchronization. Exactly, Maya had replied. Something the Valaxians would never expect because they'd never attempted themselves. Their hierarchical thinking can't conceive of such mass cooperation. The night before the surge, Maya addressed the assembled colony one final time. The meeting was held in the underground maintenance tunnels to avoid Valaxian surveillance. Tomorrow will test us beyond anything we faced, she told them, her voice echoing in the cramped space. Not just our strength or our skills, but our unity. The Valaxians believe their greatest advantage is their advanced technology. Our advantage is something they don't understand and can't measure: human determination. At dawn, the colony erupted into synchronized action. While a small decoy team continued salvage work at the chasm, the main workforce deployed along the northern ridge. Teams that had rehearsed their roles for days moved with practiced precision, laying pipe, establishing pump stations, and configuring the electromagnetic resonators that would propel water through the system. The Valaxians, caught completely off guard by the scale and speed of the operation, scrambled to respond. By the time their security forces arrived at the northern ridge, the first phase was already complete. When they shifted resources to block the second phase, the third was already underway. They can't be everywhere at once, Maya told Elijah via comm as she supervised the critical juncture where the pipeline would traverse the magnetic distortion field. And neither can we. That's why every team has to succeed independently. Hour after hour, the work continued without pause. Colonists worked through exhaustion, passing tools and components hand to hand in human chains that stretched for kilometers. Children ran messages between teams when comms were jammed by Valaxian interference. The elderly maintained supply depots, ensuring no team ran short of critical materials. 18 hours in, the Valaxians changed tactics. Ambassador Ixalian himself appeared at Maya's position, flanked by security forces. "This defiance has gone too far," he declared. "Your actions threaten the safety of this entire region. The Council has authorized direct intervention." Maya had been expecting this. She gestured to her side, where Julian and his security team stood ready. Not with weapons, they had none that could match Valaxian technology, but with cameras. "Every move you make is being broadcast to the entire colony," she informed Ixalian. "Every act of sabotage, every threat. Your challenge was a sham from the start, but we're meeting it anyway. If you interfere now, everyone will know exactly what kind of benevolent overseers you really are." Ixalian's crystalline form pulsed with colors Maya couldn't interpret. "You mistake our concern for malice, Commander. We have studied human history. Your kind achieves technological advancement before developing the wisdom to use it properly. We sought only to guide your development along a safer path, by keeping us dependent and convinced of our inferiority." Maya challenged. "That's not guidance, it's control." For a moment, Ixalian seemed genuinely conflicted. Then, to Maya's surprise, he stepped back. "Complete your project, Commander. The Council will reassess based on the outcome." As the Valaxian delegation departed, Elijah joined Maya, his expression cautious. "You think they're actually backing down?" "No," Maya said, "but they're recalculating. They never expected unity on this scale. It confuses their models." The work continued through the night and into the next day. Exhaustion took its toll. Injuries mounted, mistakes were made and hastily corrected. But hour by hour, the system took shape. The final connection would occur at Haven itself, where the pipeline would feed into the colony's central reservoir. As Maya stood with the colony's leaders watching the approaching completion, she felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, exhaustion, and uncertainty about what would follow. "One way or another, everything changes today," Elijah said quietly beside her. The connection was completed at sunset, 34 hours after the surge began. Engineers monitored pressure gauges and flow meters as the system was gradually brought online. When the first water from Mount Caraxes flowed into Haven's reservoir, a cheer erupted that seemed to shake the very ground. Maya expected immediate Valaxian interference, but none came. As night fell, the water continued to flow, clear and abundant. The impossible had been achieved. The Valaxian delegation arrived at dawn. Not just Ambassador Ixalian this time, but the entire Oversight Council, 7 towering crystalline beings whose presence transformed the central plaza into a kaleidoscope of reflected light. Maya stood before them, flanked by her command staff and representatives from every section of the colony. The entire population of Haven gathered behind them, silent but united. High Counselor Zefix, whose crystalline form was more elaborate than the others, addressed them directly. "Humans of Haven Colony, we have inspected your water transportation system. It is unorthodox, inefficient by our standards, vulnerable to numerous potential failures." Maya felt her heart sink. After everything, they would still find a way to dismiss the achievement. And yet, Zefix continued, "It functions. More importantly, it demonstrates capabilities we did not anticipate from your species. The Council has reconsidered certain assumptions." A murmur rippled through the crowd as Zefix raised an upper limb. A holographic display appeared above the plaza, showing technical schematics that Maya recognized as advanced Valaxian technology, the very information they had been denied for years. "These technical specifications will be made available to your engineers," Zefix announced. Additionally, the Council has approved Haven Colony's transition to autonomous governance, effective immediately. Valaxian advisors will remain available by request only. Maya stood in stunned silence, barely processing the words. Beside her, Elijah whispered, "Did we just win?" Zefix wasn't finished. "It is apparent that our supervision methodology was flawed. Humans do not develop linearly as our models predicted. Your chaotic approach contains efficiencies we fail to recognize." The High Counselor's form shifted, inclining slightly toward Maya in what she realized was the closest thing to a bow a Valaxian could manage. "The Council acknowledges the completion of your challenge. Haven Colony has earned its independence." As the Valaxian delegation departed in their customary flash of light, The colony erupted in celebration. Maya found herself lifted onto the shoulders of the crowd, their cheers overwhelming in their intensity. Later, as the celebration continued into the night, Maya stood with Elijah at the edge of the plaza, watching their people, truly their people now, embrace their victory. "You know what impresses me most," Elijah said, gesturing to their water system, portions of which were visible silhouetted against the night sky. "It's not that we built it. It's that we did it without becoming like them." Maya looked at him questioningly. "The Valaxians would have designed something perfect, flawless, and implemented it with precision," he explained. "We built something imperfect, adaptable, collaborative. And it works better in this environment than their perfect solution would have." Maya smiled, understanding. "Because we didn't try to conquer the planet. We worked with it." "Exactly." Elijah gazed up at the stars visible through the dust-free night air, cleaner now that proper filtration was possible with abundant water. "I wonder what else they told us is impossible." Maya followed his gaze upward. "I think we're about to find out." In the command center, already being repurposed as Haven's new governance hall, the first set of Valaxian technical specifications glowed on the main display. Among them, unmistakable despite the alien configuration, were the schematics for a starship engine. In the endless expanse of the cosmos, they said humans were too primitive, too chaotic to join the interstellar community. They were wrong. The universe may have laughed at humanity's dreams, but humanity built them anyway.